I think we are online.
Oh my God.
Hey, Jonatha Brooke,
Hey, Sam. It's
how
been a
are you?
while since I've been on the line live. I mean, this is very exciting.
It's super exciting for me.
I keep thinking that your t-shirt is like a cannabis thingy, but it's not.
No, it's a kangaroo.
I
Um,
think I need new glasses. I've been pandemic, bound and I haven't been to the glasses doctor.
yeah. No,
It's a kangaroo.
it's a kangaroo sitting on a boomerang, and it's a T-shirt for a band called Kevin Bennett and the Flood. And Kevin Bennett, strangely enough, was the co-writer on the song that you so generously came and sang
I
on this
love this
Birds record.
song. I love this song so much. The Birds record and the song Come Tomorrow.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for being a part of it. It was such a huge thrill for me. And this record kind of started out at the beginning of the pandemic. I had this idea and was encouraged by a couple of friends to kind of revisit a bunch of songs and get some female voices singing them. And I kind of had a bunch of songs that I wanted to revisit. And some of the songs, I got the writers of the songs to sing them because they always sang them better than I did. And then a few other songs that I wanted to revisit, I just kind of tried to, I don't know, just tried to dream up who might sound great on this, on the particular tracks. And when I was thinking about Come Tomorrow, I'd had a couple of coffees one day and I thought, man, Jonathan Brooke would sound fantastic on this song. And so I called our friend Ben Butler and
Bin,
said, Ben, little
Bin,
Benny,
Bin Butler.
Ben Butler. And I said, hey, Ben, do you reckon Jonathan might sing this song? And he said, let's ask. So we did. And you said yes. And I did victory laps around the house. And then you sang it and it was fantastic. And here we are.
I think that it was really good timing because it was right in the midst of the hellhole pandemic where who knew what was going to happen or how long it was going to take, and it was just this little ray of sunshine. If someone's saying like, "Hey, I like you. Do you want to sing on this beautiful little ditty that I created?" And I loved your version of it too. So I was kind of like, oh no, he's gonna kick my ass because I loved the. I remember when we were trying to decide on the key for what key I would choose, and it was like, well, should it be like an effort, or should it feel resigned and sort of inevitable? And you're like, no, inevitable is best, or I forget the words that we used for it, but like, don't, I don't, it shouldn't be pushed. It should feel like effortless, but
Right.
also, there's a resignation to it, and there's a vibe to it that has this, that forever will mean like this time in COVID that was so fraught and yet so connected by little things like you calling me out of the blue and friends reaching out, that I hadn't spoken to in a very, very long time, that sort of bridged the gap between despair and
Right.
solvency.
Well, it was fantastic. And what I loved was, it was kind of anybody that's known me for a minute knows that I'm a huge fan of yours. And there was that sort of moment of terror where you sung the vocal and you sent me the file and I like loaded it up on the computer and I was like, what if it
What if
sucks?
it sucks?
And of course, then, for the next 3.5 minutes, I was like spellbound. It was just so
Oh,
fantastic. I love that you kind of had learnt a song that Kevin and I had written and kind of, acknowledge, learnt the song, but also given it your own kind of thing as well, which was fantastic. It was really great. I want to embarrass myself and potentially you here for a minute because, like I said, anyone that's known me for a minute knows that I'm a huge fan, and um, you know, I've bought so many copies of Plum and given them to people for birthday presents and whatever. So I just want to show a couple of things that might illustrate how much of a big fan I am and what
well,
having
I
you
mean, there
sing
is that poster behind you that is sort of
that is.
unmistakable.
Yeah, yeah. But here is a photo of myself at one of your concerts in Nashville. kind of talking to you like some sort of giddy little schoolboy.
Is that City Winery?
That's
No.
City Winery, yep.
Oh, wow. Wow, wow, wow.
Booth. And then here is my friend Nick Buda, who is an A-list drummer here in Nashville. That he was equally giddy. And then
Aww.
here is you holding my baby.
Wait a minute. Is that, that's Joe Laurie.
Joe Laurie, yeah. And then if you zoom in, because there was a mirror behind us.
Why don't I remember the baby?
Look at this giddy looking dude taking the photo in the background there.
Oh my God, that's great.
And then I don't really know what's happening here.
Well, it could be. Oh, is that Ben? Oh, that's Ben Butler. So who knows? You know, if Ben's having a martini, then
yeah, whatever is happening there, Ben looks very amused by it. So
I love it.
That's some sort of like, you know, sort of trip down memory lane of what a big fan I am and what having you sing on my record meant to me.
Aw, that's wicked sweet. Well, I mean, even that made my day. There were so many dark days in this sort of shutdown, and well, still, I mean, how are you feeling about, like, are you out and about, and does it feel weird? Is it everything good?
Well, you know, I just did a handful of gigs with Kim Ritchie last month, and it was strange to be out on the road. You know, there'd be like half the audience would be masked, and then you'd go out to the sort of merch desk, and people that were masked would come up and talk to you and like pull their mask down to talk to you. Like, oh, do we not know how this works? You know, and just talking to lots of those venues that are sort of listening rooms and whatever, just sort of going, well, it's really early days yet, and people aren't running back to see music like we thought they might have. You know, everyone's still very cautious and all of that.
Wow.
So,
yeah, I have a bunch of gigs coming up on the East Coast mostly, and most of the venues are pretty serious about the protocol. Like, they require, you know, proof of vaccination, and once you're inside, you will be masked. And so I'm just hoping. I'm terrified. Right. You know, I'm terrified. Yeah. But I'm just hoping that everyone will behave and understand how scary it is to be back out there after so long.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I didn't do a gig for almost 18 months.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's our work. That's our livelihood. That's our sole thing.
Yeah. So I want to get into a bunch of questions that I've always wanted to ask you. Firstly, how did music start for you? Like, what was that moment where you said, like, I love music, this is going to be my thing?
It was in college. I was late to the table.
Right.
It was college. It was sophomore year of college, and I was always musical, but I was mostly a dancer. Right. I was hardcore dancer since I was 7. So college, I took this composition course, and our first assignment was to take a poem and set it to music. So I found this E. Cummings poem called "Love Is More Thicker Than Forget," and I created a song out of it, and that became this very vivid turning point from full-on dancer to like, oh, maybe I'm supposed to write songs and sing them, because I have this very weird ear and I crave dissonance. I crave all of the odd notes. I crave I crave counterpoint. I crave like vocals like hitting up against each other in minor seconds and major seconds, and then, you know, someday resolving, but like holding longer than is usually comfortable for most folks. And that's just where I live. And I realize I don't get enough of that. Like, I need to write this myself, because I'm not here. I'm always adding it to everyone else's songs. I'm adding it to James Taylor's songs. I'm adding it to Ricky Lee Jones and whoever. But like, I could just write my own songs and do the minor seconds and the major seconds. And like, so it was kind of a revelation. And so that was when it was like, oh, maybe this is supposed to be my job. And then it took a few years to figure out, like, am I a modern dancer or am I a musician, or can I do both? And then there was this one very exhausting night where I was performing with a dance company in Boston that I was, you know, in every single piece of the show. It was like dress rehearsal, and then I was running over to Riles, this jazz club in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and having a record release party for my first major label record. And I realized that, like, I can't do this. I can't do all the things. So I think I'm going to take the record deal and get on the bus and be a songwriter and a record maker.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you did. And did you start on guitar or piano?
Well, I took piano lessons when I was a kid because that's what you're supposed to do and you're told to. But it was really so. I just am an emotional creature, and so when I couldn't read music because I played by ear too easily, I would just fall apart and I would just be in tears every single lesson. I was so terrified of the teacher because I still, the notes on the page are still Greek to me. I defer to my ear. And that's the problem when you're taking piano lessons and you're supposed to read music. So that was really traumatic for me. And then the guitar became my thing when I was 13, and I got a guitar for Christmas, and I just started making shit up.
Right. And then, so
wait, someone here is saying Sam needs dance lessons.
Oh,
Gavin, I can see that. I can see he needs a ballet class and maybe a couple yoga interims.
Yeah, Gavin's seen me dance. He doesn't need to see it again. And then, like, I've been asking other people this: who are we? Given that we're talking about birds, and who were your favorite birds to listen to?
My birds. Rickie Lee Jones, I have recently been thinking about quite a bit because I have to say she's one of my biggest influences.
Right.
The Magazine is a particular record of hers that I loved, but all, Pirates, her first one, what's the one? I'm blanking on the name of it, but I can see the picture of it. Even Traffic from Paradise. There's a song she wrote about the Pope. Well, it's kind of a dirty lyric, so you'll have to go find it. The song about the Pope. But anyway, Rickie Lee Jones, Elis Regina, the Brazilian singer who passed away quite young, but like she was a huge influence. The way she sang with this abandon and this chutzpah and her phrasing. Jazz singers and their phrasing is certainly something that I've learned from all the Brazilian songwriters, Stevie Wonder, Chaka Khan, Chopin.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of makes sense to me because, you've done 12 albums, but the one that I heard initially was Plum.
Mm.
And for me, that hearing you say all that makes a lot of sense because that record had a lot of like folky influences, but also jazz things as well. And it was a real ear opener to me. It was like, oh, you can combine all those elements. And I remember when the first time I heard it, I was at my friend Glenn Wilson's house, and he always had an incredible stereo system. And he put Plum on, and I was like, oh my goodness, what is this? Because there was like such fantastic playing and singing and writing, and Bob Clearmountain mixed it, and that doesn't hurt, so it was kind of that hearing you say that about Rickie Lee Jones and jazz singers and stuff, it's like, oh, okay, I can kind of hear that in the music.
It's so interesting because Steve Gadd is on some of those Rickie early records, and he played on a couple of my records, which of course will forever be my. I'm just still stunned that he showed up and it was interested. But also on Plum, Abe Laboriel Jr., who now plays with Paul McCartney, was a huge part of the groove and the deep pocket of those songs, especially Inconsolable. I know you know that song still. The fact that we let it roll, we just went with it, and there was this sort of extended, piano solo. Alain Mallet, my ex-husband, who was my producer, just took off, and then Abe just took it further and further back. I wonder if you sort of did a click track and you measured how far back the BPMs went by the end of the tune from the beginning.
Right.
I just wonder what it was, because I don't think any of those songs had a click track. We were just sort of doing the thing, and Abe has such a deep pocket that like the world just goes with him. It's like a huge sofa. But yeah, all those players, like serious cats. And I've been lucky my whole career to be surrounded by like serious cats. They're serious musicians, where I'm learning as much as anybody every time I bring the songs to the team.
Right. Because I imagine that they're kind of drawn to your music because there's a complexity of harmony and stuff. It's not just throwaway, from any angle, be it lyrically or harmonically. It's yeah. And I think, as you mentioned, Inconsolable, that for me is kind of like, if you've had a hit, that for me is your hit. And I always marvel at the distance between the kick drum and the snare after the chorus. It's like it's just like you hit it, you did hit it. It's just like, it's so back, but it never ever feels like it's slowing down or whatever. It just feels like incredible.
Yeah. And then those vocals are just like, hey, those floating things, and then it just the reverb and the crash and it's just so good. I still can't believe that happened, and that just happened. That was a take, and it was clear. Like, I wonder, I should find the 2-inch sometime and find, because it went on after we faded it. I want to hear the rest of that.
I always chase the fade out and like turn it up, because I just like, sometimes when you're mixing a track, it's going really great, and then it sort of falls off the cliff or whatever. And I always wonder, did it like fall off the cliff?
I doubt it, because he's doing that like do 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 do. He's going somewhere even fresher and bigger than who knows. I got to find the 2-inch. It's probably in my basement.
I'd love to hear the extended play out.
I already got into deep trouble because it was like 7.5 minutes long, and they're like, you can't put this on the record. And I'm like, yes, I will put this on the record, and I will decide where it fades. And that was a big deal with the label. And luckily I won the war.
Oh, that's awesome. So did you all track live on that thing?
Yeah.
On that.
Yeah.
And did anyone at the end of that take go, oh, I've got a better one in me? Or did you all just like have goosebumps and go, no, that was it?
Oh my God, I don't actually remember. I don't remember. I can't imagine we didn't all feel like that was something remarkable that just happened.
Right. And how did that... Sorry.
No, and I'm sure, yeah, I can't imagine that we all weren't kind of dumbstruck.
Right. Yeah, it's a pretty magic. For anybody, any Australians out there that don't know Jonatha or whatever, check out that Plum record as a starting point, and listen to Inconsolable, and it's just like, it's fantastic. So how did that song start?
It was actually kind of an assignment that I gave myself, because there are I go through these phases of like, more complication, more tension, more dissonance, and then I'm like, no, you must write a song in standard with only 3 chords, and you're not allowed any sharp whatevers. And then I sort of teeter back and forth. So Inconsolable was this combination of both things. Like, you must write a simple song, and you're allowed only a few chords.
Right.
And don't make it too maudlin. So, oh, dude.
I mean, did it start like that, or?
No, I'm just remembering what it was. John Leventhal, who's done a lot of production for Sean Colvin, sent me this tuning, which, if you don't have a capo on it,
that's really interesting, because I went down a well of like looking up your tunings today, and I saw that tuning, and I was like, that's the John Leventhal, Sean Colvin tuning, and I was like, I wonder where, you know.
I want it back. Or something. Dun, dun, I want it back. Na, 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 na. So, okay, so he sent me this tuning. It was like it's a G chord over a C. So I just was messing around with it. I ended up with it in D instead of C. So, this is like my favorite tuning of all time. It's the tuning that this guitar also loves. So the assignment was, okay, you get 3 chords, maybe 4. You get at least 3 chords. You only get 3 chords for the verse. So, and it has to be wicked boring and wicked straight ahead, and it has to be. And then I had this idea of like, okay, and it's called Inconsolable. There's your assignment, Jonatha Brooke. Like, you get 3 chords. Had the title. It's Inconsolable. Right. You're really, really sad. So it wasn't even really. I mean, I hate to admit it. It didn't grow out of like, I'm so sad. I'm gonna die after I write a song. It was more like 3 chords and a word. Right. And then so I'm like, because I'll always end up in 3. And the great thing about this tuning is that you get to do the hammer on to get your C, your tonic, and then you get your sus really easily. Because standard tuning is just a bitch and a bear and a bore to me. So like, why not have all the strings and have a low D even with a capo on, you still lower than low. Yeah. So that was my assignment. I never knew what enough was, and then it was more about like this kind of a jazzy approach to like free-forming these words that were sort of conversational over the simplicity of those chords.
Right. Yeah,
and that was the assignment.
When I found that tuning, that was that whole Few Small Repairs record. I was like, oh, that's that song and that sound and all of that. And like hearing you play those chords makes that song so much more interesting than, because it's just like F sharp minor, G, D.
Yeah, but doesn't it sound icky that way?
It sounds so square like that, but then when you get in that tuning and you go, it's like, it's so like deep and exotic and heartfelt and whatever. Yeah, that chord is.
Whoops. Yeah. I mean, I really should write John Leventhal and thank him for that tuning. It's really born so many good songs.
I saw him being interviewed and he talked about that tuning, and I was like, I went over to the guitar and just tuned it, and I was like, oh, there it is. It's really cool. So how did you, other than John Leventhal giving you that tuning, how did you get into the tuning thing? By Joni, or I mean, we're all sort of indebted to her and that.
We're all indebted to Joni. But actually, I have to say the Roach Sisters were my very first sort of exploration of a tuning. Was me trying to learn the Hammond song by the Roach Sisters way back in the day. And they had this, you can do it in this tuning as well. They had, you go down to Hammond. So it was again that sort of, there's the major 7 and so you get to hammer on your, I just did it in this E flat tuning that is my other favorite tuning, and that became the base of a lot of the early songs. Like the story songs are in that E flat. It's like an E flat 9 tuning, so there's an F in it, but there's a D in the top so that you can hammer on to the E flat.
Right.
So yeah, my very first tuning was trying to learn the Hammond song by the Roach Sisters.
Right. That's cool. So how do you like remember, like when you look down at the set list and you go, oh, what tune? I mean, obviously you write it down, but like I was looking at on your website, you've got all the tunings that you use, or on it was some video or something that I saw where you'd written out all the tunings, and I was just like, how do you remember what shape? You know?
I don't all the time. I
Right.
mean, I'll have a few clams a night, usually on a good night, because the shapes are a little, they're not that far off, but they're just different enough from each tuning in each song. Because I mean, what's weird is it's still 1 4 5, 6 minor. You're still got the basic chords of pop music, but you're just embellishing with these dissonant tension notes that the open tunings allow you to get more easily just by
Right.
clumping your hands around the bass line. And because I'm an untrained musician, I'm just mostly clumping my hands around the bass line to find my standard chords, but they just sound richer and fuller because of the tension notes that happen upon my fingers. So
I love
I'm always messing up.
I love on Inconsolable how like you're playing in that tuning, but the piano is actually quite straight during the verses and things. It's like when I was listening to it this morning, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, the piano. Considering what he does in the outro, the piano is like really straight, and
So
it,
good.
it does great things.
So
So
good.
I noticed that that's an Olson, and you've got two of them. How does one get two Olsons?
Well, one buys them 20 years ago. Yeah, I got in early. I was one of the early converts to Olson guitars because Dave Wilcox was at the time, we were all in the same circuit. Dave Wilcox and Patty Larkin and Cheryl Wheeler and I were playing around the same kinds of clubs and stuff. And we would just do whatever Dave said because Dave had the most amazing guitar sound and he was into the open tunings. And so when Dave said, you guys have to call this guy Jim Olson because he got these amazing guitars, and we would hear David's sound and we'd be like, yeah, I guess we better get an Olson. So Patty got one, Cheryl got one, I got one, and then I got another one, and back when you could afford them, and they just became, and this one in particular is just a gorgeous instrument. And I had him make it with that particular tuning in mind. I said, okay, Jim, I'm going to use medium gauge strings. This is the tuning. It's C, G, D, G, B, D, from bottom to top. Someone was asking earlier, C, G, D, G, B, D. So can you temper it? Can you make the wood be resonant to that tuning with that particular gauge strings? And also, can you make the neck be a girl neck? Because the typical Olson neck doesn't feel great under my hands. And my first Olson I ended up selling because the neck wasn't, it just hurt my thumb. He was like, why did I fucking do that? Anyway, so then he made the two that I have girlier necks.
Right. Well, that makes sense. I mean, plenty of people.
Being a girl and all.
Being good, but if you've got small hands, then get a neck that is built for that.
Oh yeah, look, someone's yelling well, not yelling. Ruth, Blood from a Stone, same tuning, same chords. Blood from a Stone. So dumb, right? Anyway, yeah, same thing.
Now you've got a songwriting workshop coming up in Nashville at the end of the year.
I do.
If people would go to that, what do you talk about? Do you talk about how to come up with a line like "I love you because I love you," which is great.
Exactly.
Did you do a victory lap around the house when you come up with that?
No, I was probably like, I can't say that. That's so dumb. Oh my god, I'm going to fire myself. Well, first of all, I think it's sold out, but you can put your name on a waiting list. But there will be more next year. So
this isn't the first one you've done. You've done a couple of them before.
Oh, I've been doing these Nashville ones for about what, 5 years maybe?
Right.
5 or so years. But yeah, you'll learn a lot of stuff. You'll learn some sort of obvious tools to put in your belt. You'll learn about stickiness and melody and like what notes matter and what words matter and why it matters that you coincide the words that matter with the notes that matter, and how you fit them into your range so that they're, you make, there are stakes. There's something at stake if you put the most important word on the most important note, that it's perhaps at the edge of your range, so that the audience knows that it freaking means something to you. Like, you have to stretch for it. So you were the one sure thing that says all the things that I just said. And that's what we talk about a little bit in songwriting workshops. In a nutshell.
Not giving away all your secrets.
I don't want to give it all away here tonight for free.
We were texting earlier about, we were talking about birds, and you said when you first, can you tell your story about Ronnie Scott's?
So I didn't know until today, because I'm sorry, I hadn't seen that the record was called Birds. So I was like, oh, that's so funny, because birds, birds. Birds are pretty and birds are the thing. But one of my first times touring in England, I played this beautiful jazz club called Ronnie Scott's. It's still there. And I got there and they had my name wrong on the marquee. It was like Jonatha Brooks. And so usually I just laugh it off and I try to be a good sport about it. So I get to the door and there's this big burly door guy there. And I'm like, hi, I'm Jonatha Brooke. And he's like, Jonathan? And I'm like, no, it's Jonatha. And he's like, oh, you're a bird, not a bloke. And I was like, oh, I guess I'll remember that, because that's a good story. I'm fantastic. A bird. I didn't until then know that chicks were birds.
Right. So when I put this record out, and I've got a distributor in Australia that helped me kind of get it up online and all of that. Yeah. So I'd gone through and checked everything, and did all the stuff that you have to do to get it up online and whatever, and sent it through. And the record's released and whatever, and I checked the spelling, that it wasn't Jonathan and all of that. And so I send it off, and then like a week later, this friend of mine, Kim, she sends me a message and said, hey, just letting you know that on Spotify and iTunes and all of that, it's Jonathan Brooke.
Oh no, and they did it again. Oh, you poor thing.
How can that happen? It's like, as I alluded to before, I'm somewhat of a fan, and it's like, really, they've gone with Jonathan. And I went back and checked that I'd sent it off, and I rang the guy, and he said I checked it as well, because it's such an unusual name.
Yeah.
I double checked that I Googled her and made sure that it was right and whatever. And so somewhere along the line, the people that he uses had let spell check run ramp. So it took me about 2 or 3 weeks to get it corrected. And I had my fingers crossed the whole time, going, I hope
she doesn't see it. No, I mean, it's this story of my life, and I get it. It's hard, and it's usually some really earnest person who thinks they've caught a terrible, terrible mistake, and that they're doing someone a huge favor. Right. So you can't really hold it against them. It's like the TSA people at the tiny, 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 tiny airports. They're the ones that are gonna take away that blueberry jam that you bought in bum whatever Maine, because you can only get the blueberry jam in whatever Maine, but they are going to do their job, and they're going to thwart terrorism, and they're going to take your blueberry jam away. It's like the person spell checking for Spotify.
Yeah, right.
Bless them.
That's funny. What else did I want to
Anyway,
ask?
I wouldn't have been mad. I would have understood. It happens to me every freaking day.
Right. Well, I figured that, but I also didn't want to be that guy. But I did manage to spell another artist, Wendy Page, who I've known for a long time. I managed to put an I in her name in Page where there wasn't one. Sorry, Wendy. I don't know why. Anyway, that was on me. But I was like,
it's
no,
exotic that way.
Yeah, I did. That's what I thought. I thought
I was
it's
almost named Paige, actually. That was the second in line for my name.
really.
Paige, yeah.
Huh. There you go. Small world. So you,
Yeah.
well, I won't keep you too long, but this has kind of been super fun. You live in Minneapolis.
I do.
Now, why Minneapolis? I mean, there are other, because you moved there somewhat recently, and there are other more temperate places in the United States
Nah,
where you could live.
not for long.
Right.
Not for
Not
long.
for long. Yes, you're right.
People are flocking here. This is the new temperate place of the world. Like, number one, the ocean will not reach us here.
Right.
So flooding won't get to us. So far, fires have not gotten to us. And global warming will just make the winters perfect, actually.
You're ahead of the game.
We are so, like, we had no idea how thought forward we were. We moved here in 2017, 16, end of 2016. So just in time, really.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
played a
great
bunch
town.
with the Bodines up in Minneapolis, and I've never been as cold as I've been in Minneapolis. You know.
It's only a couple weeks a year. I mean, I'm from Boston. It's cold in Boston. We're sort of on a similar, whatever, equatorial band.
Right. In New
Okay, so
York.
there are a couple weeks where it's a little bit colder than that, but not literally, not for long.
Right.
And you just learn how to layer, and I'm such a good knitter that I've got sweaters.
No, I watched another interview where you talked about knitting as being kind of almost like a conduit to fleshing out song ideas. That if you get to a point where you're stuck on a song, you'll put it down and go and knit, and then the chorus might pop out to you.
Yeah, knitting
That
and
happens a lot.
laundry.
Right.
It's very true. There's something about um is the word menial, like work that doesn't take a lot of brain power but is physical,
Right.
that frees your brain to solve the problem of the intellectual thing. Where if you're just sort of washing a beautiful pair of mittens, in the cedar woolen mitten wash, your brain solves the problem of the chorus of Inconsolable. Like, what's my next line? Like, you are
Right.
the one sure thing, you're the one sure thing. Damn it, what's the next line? I'm hitting the wall. I will go wash some mittens or knit another row on my sweater. And, oh, maybe I'm not crazy, just Inconsolable will pop in on the pearl row. You never
Right.
know.
That's fantastic. I might have to take knitting up just to.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're married but it's always good for your partners to be cleaning. It's a good thing for the household.
Right.
Cleaning it's good for songwriting, but it's also for the home harmony.
Right. There you go. My wife will hand me a basket of laundry when I walk upstairs. Yeah.
She'll send me flowers.
Yeah. Since he did that interview with you, the house has never been so clean. You know?
And look at all the songs you've come up with in the meantime.
Exactly. Yeah, I always find, like in a co-write situation, sometimes it's good to just leave the room. You know.
Totally.
Just
Totally. I was
um,
co-writing recently, and I just had such a great time with this my new friend Catherine Williams. She's in the UK. I don't know if you've heard of her. Great songwriter. And I was just meeting her for the first time, and we hit it off so great that we just got so chatty, and we forgot to write a song. So in the meantime, we were like, oh, we better write something, and then we got all pet up about it, and so we wrote this song about death, thinking like, all right, we'll get this one out of the way, and it won't matter, and it'll just be funny. And we wrote the song about death, and then the second that we got through with that, the real song came through.
right.
It's called the Little Things, and that was super cool. You never know. You just never know. Write a song. So you can knit, you can do your hand washing, or you can write a stupid song and trick your brain
And clear the air.
yeah,
Right.
clear the air. Write a song about death or taxes, and then the real song will break through.
Cool. Couple more little things that I wanted to know. Whose idea was it to get Bruce Cockburn to sing on War?
I believe that was my idea. We had been in touch because he fell in love with the angel in the house
Right.
and had written me this beautiful letter that I still have in my folder of, it's called Read It and Weep. I have a folder that's called Read It and Weep to remind me that everything's going to be okay and that you did do something in your lifetime that meant something. So, like, I saved the Bruce Coburn letter, I saved the Pat Metheny letter. Uh, and he,
What did the Pat Metheny letter say?
oh God, he had come to a show. He'd come to the show at the Ansbacher at the Public Theater that ended up being the DVD live in New York. And he just, he was so lovely. But I mean, he's Pat friggin' Metheny. But he was like, wow, the level of artistry was stunning and your songwriting. And, it was like, anyway, it's in the Read It and Weep folder because I don't want to cry.
Right.
But so Bruce Coburn had written this letter, and so we were in touch, and he'd written a song inspired by me. And then I was like, well, that voice, I mean, no one sounds like Bruce Coburn. And I think he's got the gravitas, and he's in this great range with my higher, more soprano voice that would be such a great combination. So, and he was thrilled. He was thrilled. He came to New York, and he sang on the record and gave it his thing,
Right.
the Bruce Coburn thing.
Yeah, it's fantastic when he comes in on that verse. It's like, oh wow,
Yeah.
that's
He's
awesome.
still like one. I don't know if you know his song "Pacing the Cage."
I love that song.
It's still like one of the top 10 songs of all time.
Yeah, I love that Bruce Coburn era. And
That line about "I've proven who I am so many times now, the magnetic strip's worn thin." Like,
yeah,
come on now, that's genius.
yeah, that's fantastic. And the other record, is it Charity of the Night?
Yeah,
That's really great too.
yep.
Um, and then I also love like that song of his "Tie Me at the Crossroads When I Die."
Oh, I don't know that one.
Oh, it's on Dart to the Heart, I think that record's called.
Oh, early.
He says, "Hang me in the wind till I get good and dry, and the kids will pass and say, 'Who was that guy?'" Tie me at the crossroads when I die. It's really good. Check it out. All right, one more question, and then I'll let you go because my friend Matt Fell, who mixed Come Tomorrow, wanted to know what was it like working with Neil Finn on New Dress?
Oh God, it was so dreamy.
Were you a fan of his?
Yeah, I was a fan of his, and it never would have occurred to me to call him. But I was working on that record with Bob Clearmountain, and so we're Bob Clearmountain's house in L.A. and
As you do.
as you do, and we're making the record in his house basically. So like the piano's upstairs, and the mixing, the SSL, this huge SSL board is in his basement basically, and there's the swimming pool's out across the patio. And so he's like, it'd sound great on this song, Neil Finn. I'm like, yeah, he would. And he's like, well, I'll call him. I'll just, it doesn't hurt. So I'm like, you'll call him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Like, go ahead. And so he calls Neil Finn, and he happens to be in town, and he like comes over the next night, and we have dinner, and we have a glass of wine, and then he sings the harmony on the song. And now I'm like, I love that song.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it was interesting because you never know, like harmony is a very specific thing. And you never know if someone can
about harmony too,
Yeah. And you never know if someone can hang with it. Because, if you're pushing against another note, it can be intimidating if you're not used to that kind of thing. And he just gravitated toward that particular harmony. And it's an interesting one. And,
right.
I think we made it together, and he really was smart about which notes would be the right notes. Cool. And that was exciting, to be pleasantly surprised by another singer.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me on a Friday night.
Hey, we're party in the cities.
On this Birds record, it was, like I said, it was a dream come true. And
well, I'm a bird, not a bloke.
You're a bird.
After all.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. You are touring soon for anyone that's out there.
Yeah, East Coast-ish. Yeah.
On your website in October, is that right?
Yeah, it starts in October in DC and Philly and New York and Massachusetts, Northampton and Portland, Maine, and then I'm in Nashville
in
in
December.
December on the, I believe, the 13th. So,
My buddy Nick has already bought tickets for us, so
oh,
we're
that's
going to be
wicked
there.
sweet.
Yeah, it'll be super fun. Well, again, thank you so much. That was a blast, and I'll see you in December.
All right, and any more songs, just send them my way.
Okay, don't.
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much, and talk soon.
Thanks, Sam.
Okay, bye, Jonatha.
Bye.